Thank you, Asim, and thank you, Sanjay. Thank you, Vidya, for joining us. This is the second session and the first fireside chat format we have for this CII event. Thank you once again. Let me just set some context, and then I'll bring you guys in for some Q&A. So the topic for today is workplace trends, and as we all know, a lot has been said about the current situation. A lot has been talked about the impact of COVID on our lives at home, lives at work as well. In fact, we've all heard different perspectives. WFH, which we normally use as an acronym for working from home, during the lockdown became something that was jokingly referred to as webinars after every 2 hours. That was the extent to which we were exposed to so many perspectives. Well, one thing's for sure, the pandemic has created a lot of uncertainty, and the impact of the pandemic on business operations and real estate has been debated, has been ideated, and has been discussed, like we saw in the previous session as well. Now, some say that this will have a long-lasting effect on how we live and how we work. Some say it could be very short-term. We will get to you in terms of your impressions and your perspectives as well. But certainly one thing is for sure, the present or the pandemic creates a lot of opportunities for corporates in many ways, and especially for the real estate functions. It creates opportunities for real estate professionals to drive value by accelerating certain themes that were already there, even pre-pandemic. Could be sustainability, could be technology adoption, etc. And certainly it enables them to drive new themes or new projects or programs, such as enabling remote working, etc. So in our own research, we've identified themes that have come up as we've talked to corporates across the world, including India. We've heard corporates say they want to create a conscious workplace that will create a more inclusive culture. And that inclusiveness creates or has a different connotation in the new world. But research clearly shows that companies that have a more inclusive culture have greater performance as well. Corporates are also saying they want to have a more augmented workplace. Sanjay, you and I spoke a couple of weeks back, and you had mentioned something that I agree to as well, that experience of employees will drive the real estate strategy. Now, our own research and survey actually of our own employees shows that 71% of our employees want more automation at the workplace because they feel they'll feel comfortable and more productive if they have better control of the environment they're in. So you can imagine personalized environments, for example, from an air conditioning, air quality, sound, etc. perspective. Sustainability is a big theme. Now, of course, we've talked about sustainability for the last 10, 15 years. It became a CXO mandate. But as our CEO Christian said in the opening session, that you've got to look at sustainability in the broadest sense of the word. And we do believe that it's going to be more important than ever before. It's a great opportunity to integrate the carbon neutrality objectives inside the real estate lifecycle objectives. The other thing that companies talk about are metrics. In the past, the real estate function focused mostly on operating metrics. But now, as real estate becomes the most strategic partner to the business, the metrics will evolve as well to including more outcome-oriented metrics. Could be employee experience, could be, let's say, diversity or sustainability, etc. In summary, there's a lot happening. The real estate function has been lifted a few notches in profile. We're starting to see the real estate function becoming a big strategic partner to the business, more so in the last few months than ever before. I think for progressive companies, that journey already started a few years back, but we're seeing this across the board now. And of course, the CRE function or the CRE leaders are going to get busier than ever before. So with that, let's dive deeper into this topic and we'll pick your brain. So I'm going to start off with you, Vidya. How will tomorrow's reimagined workplace look like?
You broke up a bit, Sandeep. You'll have to repeat the question.
My question was, how will tomorrow's reimagined workplace or office look like?
Yeah. See, so one is, I think the reimagination of workplace has begun, at least for a lot of us, more than a couple of years back. I think the fact that collaboration becomes very critical, the fact that, as you mentioned, sustainability is important. employees spend a large part of their day at the workplace, and so how do you make that more accessible to them? You sort of democratize it, and how do you invest in a bunch of technologies that make life easier for them when they are in office? I think those are pieces that started pre-COVID as well. I think there were some pieces on, on safety, hygiene, air quality as well that begun. I think what COVID has done has given it the push. What we would have thought would have been maybe a 12 to 18-month cycle to complete, you probably will complete it faster. So whether it is the kind of investments you're going to make in your air conditioning systems, which by the way for a lot of our cities in India, even without COVID, was required because basically the air quality in winters just plummeted, and that caused a lot of other health issues for employees, and especially in closed environments. Now there are some other pieces, but I think it's going to be a balancing act. I think there are some pieces which, including safety and security, and as well as, I think in some cases personalizing space, which will be important, and on a go forward basis. I think you will not get the full output from the employees if they don't feel comfortable and safe in their workplace. So a lot of attention is being given to that now. It always was an agenda item. I think it just come front office. It's not like we didn't focus on air quality, or we didn't focus on safety earlier. It's just that now in many cases we've educated the business, because a lot of our business guys didn't even know what AHU meant, and now they all talk AHU. So I think it's just come from the back room to the front room. That's the only difference for a few of us, at least.
You're right. And this comfortable and safe feeling of the employees, I think you're right. It's always been there, but we've got to address the perception now. So the psychological safety is very, very important, isn't it? So for that, you have to address the perception and not just do the right things from an operations perspective. Sanjay, what's your thought on this topic?
So I sometimes wonder, why do we say reimagined workplace, right? Workplace has continuously been evolving, will continue to do so. What I definitely see, especially post-COVID, is a lot of work will be done on the experience side, right? And you refer to our other conversation. I do see larger emphasis on health and well-being, more flexible workspaces with focus on, some of the things we have learned on social distancing and health and all that. I agree with Vidya. I mean, a lot of work will happen on equipment or the hardware side. There will be more changes. For example, air conditioning, right? As she said. I think most importantly, technology is going to play a large role, and more on the touchless experience. But at the same time, I think the discussion should also be on how people will look at their workplace, how they will use it, how they will interact with it, especially, as I said, post-COVID. At the same time, on the other side, I have not seen very encouraging uptake of tech, even if, the companies or the organizations are going back to their people and saying, this is a good app, this is a good app for your well-being, or something that enables the organizations to, reach out to you or track you in case of any city or community-wide crisis. So in my view, this is going to be an interesting area.
Yeah, you're right about the technology adoption. It hasn't been high, but it's also probably the most important lever in terms of driving that perceived safety we just spoke about. If I don't have to touch a button, and if I can do it remotely or with an app, for example, I'd feel a lot safer, more comfortable. With you on that. Let's move on to the next question. I'll talk about the conscious workplace. It's nothing but a term that talks about a workplace that's more inclusive. Of course, focuses a lot more on safety and well-being, as we discussed. Vidya, can you share with us how you think some of these topics will influence the design of the office in the future?
Yeah, I think there are obviously, every organization has its own journey on what they consider inclusive. For us, inclusivity right now is, you hire people, with the PWD workforce. How do you? A lot of our existing larger buildings that exist are not necessarily friendly for PWD, right? So if you want to hire differential people with certain kinds of disabilities, how do you make that accessible to them? How do you make a bunch of the stuffs which need, if you're visually impaired, accessible more by sound? Those are pieces that we need to focus on. That's one journey that's obviously happening. The other journey is, different people have different needs within even the regular not PWD workforce. So certain work types need more sort of space which they can collaborate and work and stuff like that. You make that available, but certain others are better off doing work in their own space because they're largely more, their jobs don't need them to do that. So how do you make some of those available? I think those are the challenges from a design standpoint that one will have to start looking at. The other is obviously, and we've obviously seen that when we take over some of the spaces, when we do acquisitions, one of the first things we focus on really is just change the energy of the place, a lot of which has to do with, if you have high barriers and you have some of the old world furniture, it sort of does inhibit energy. And so how do you work through that? But again, this is very, very people and person specific, or at least cohort of people specific, because there will be groups of people who like certain kinds of open offices and stuff, but there'll be another group of people who probably will be completely counterproductive if we try and push them into open offices. So I think intelligent organizations need to have those conversations and start working through. For us, I think sustainability and adapting technology, making sure employee involvement, or at least the fact that they like the workplace, all three are sort of meshed together, because at the center of all eventually is the user. It is the employee that has to be your focus. Space is not an end in itself; it's just a means to an end where they come and spend a large part of their day.
Right.
I think that's where we are focusing, and sustainability for us, at least in the last 5 to 6 year journey we've had, is a big one. I mean, it's not just carbon footprint, it's also energy efficiency, which eventually leads to carbon footprint saving, and a bunch of those pieces, and predictability, which is important. So I think some of these, and it is a fact that the standard of building quality can vary, in different places. So how do you get into those and do the right kind of? When we've been known to take very aggressive punts on buildings, most people don't even dare to go where we do. But that's just how we are, and then we make it work for us with different kinds of levels. So really, it's to each their own. There is no right or wrong in this one.
That's true. I mean, I know that Genpact as an organization has been very forward-looking in the context of sustainability and diversity, etc. Do you think the current situation fast tracks that agenda, or do you see it being not really impacting the path that you're already on?
Was that question for me? Because you keep picking up in between.
Sorry, Vidya, I'll repeat. Yeah, the question was for you. I was asking you to build on your response. Do you think the current pandemic will fast track that agenda, or will it really not have any impact?
I think in some areas it will fast track the agenda, especially where the older buildings, where we know we need to refocus on some of the quality of the high-side engineering investments. It will. In some others it will not. But I also think, and it's a very interesting confluence that's happening actually. Just that when we are in the middle of the pandemic, we all know that a bunch of companies are now getting assessed, and the stock prices will have a vector, which is how are you doing on sustainability. So it's becoming a boardroom discussion. So it's all going to come together. I also see an interesting tussle at this point, because we signed up for this doing away with single-use plastic, and then the pandemic came, and now we had to actually almost consciously de-accelerate for like 2-3 months, because I honestly don't want people reusing some of the mugs and stuff, because that's a source. So it's going to be a constant back and forth that's going to happen for sure. There will be a push from the clients, not so much from just the office, but the solutions we offer from a continuity standpoint, which in turn, in many cases, may impact the way we look at our office space, which may mean that we figure ways of getting smarter about having some continuity related discussions. Because one thing COVID has for sure busted is that the biggest single point of failure is the person not being available. It's no longer about redundancy of power or redundancy of telecom lines. It's just what if the person who does the work doesn't is not available. And obviously I think that conversation will also change in the next few years as automation starts taking over. Then it'll be a very different conversation. Office space will start looking different as RPA starts accelerating in a big way.
Thanks. Sanjay, I know Accenture also has some very bold targets related to sustainability, diversity, and you guys have published those targets. And I've seen how you measure performance also. They become a big part of your DNA and your day-to-day operations as well. What's your sense in terms of how this situation will impact that sustainability journey? There are two sides to that, and the reason why I'm asking you is because some people feel, this is going to create a distraction. There's going to be less money available for sustainable efforts. Some people feel this is only going to fast track that whole thing. What's your view on that?
So, first of all, let's talk about the influence, right? And, I talk to a lot of my peers in the industry. I mean, last 3-4 years, I personally worked on very, very interesting designs, right? So I would say that it already has a very, very significant influence, right? And then at the same time, it's a journey. I mean, as you know, I work with Accenture. Some of these things, sustainability, inclusion and diversity and all that. I mean, some of these things are part of our core value and culture. And, as you talk about conscious workplace, I mean, to me, conscious workplace is about, continuous process of self-assessing, self-awareness, and then as a result, next level transformation. It is also about running a responsible business, which means doing the business right in a right way, right things for your people, right things for your community. I personally run the WD program at Accenture, and I would say that now the discussion has to be more about sensitization, responsible behavior at individual level. I think we need to change the tempo of this discussion. Lifecycle management of the products and services that you use is, as you know, again, is a big discussion. I think now everyone agrees that technology, will be an essential part of the experience and a big enabler. But at the same time, as we talk about some of these things, Sandeep, I agree with Vidya, different organizations are at different level of their journey. So this also needs big dollars. So different organizations will deal with it differently. Now, as far as your other question in terms of what focus post-COVID, some of these things will have. I think post-COVID or post-pandemic world should anyway be more responsible, right? I don't see any reason why sustainability would take a back seat. We are not wrapping up our offices, our entire real estate portfolio tomorrow and going home, right? Manufacturing will thrive, retail will thrive. We are not selling our cars. Are you selling your car? Not at all. Sustainability is a part of responsible business and will continue to be a key focus area, right? I think it's a huge opportunity for businesses to fast track their sustainability programs. For example, we have realized that we can do business without traveling or meeting your clients face to face, right? We have realized that probably we don't need all our people in office at one go. But as I said earlier, we need to take the decision or this discussion a notch up, right? Time to focus on sensitization, responsible behavior, and also responsible procurement, responsible use, and responsible disposal.
Yep. In the past, I do feel personally, though it's my opinion, that organizations focused a lot on, let's say, the profit and the planet when they talked of sustainability. I do feel this situation will fast track the people agenda as well. And by people, I don't mean just the employees. Look, during lockdown, we all came to our balconies and our parking lots and we clapped for the frontline staff. And the real estate function employs a lot of blue-collar workers, construction workers, housekeepers, security guards, etc. I do feel there's a lot more consciousness today and awareness in corporates that the people who come to work for them, who make their facilities healthier, cleaner, better, etc., they deserve an opportunity for us to improve their lives as well. I've seen a lot of companies in the last 2-3 months talking about diverting some of the CSR funds to that part of the ecosystem as well, which I think is great. But very encouraged to hear that both you guys feel the agenda stays. In fact, it'll be fast-tracked in a few ways. I'm going to move on to the next question. Please, go on.
No, I was saying that the other thing that we need to keep in mind is responsible organizations will do business with responsible organizations. And some things that we are talking about, they are business essentials. You get evaluated on this.
No, that's right. I think the whole ecosystem will have to be aligned. Otherwise, the story doesn't flow very well. I'm with you on that. Moving on to the next question, I want to talk a little about technology. Sanjay, maybe I'll start with you since you brought it up in your earlier response. Just put on your, pull out your crystal ball and tell us what technology would be really cool in the new world that you forget the cost aspect, but what would you really like to have from a workplace perspective? I'm not talking about cool gadgets at home.
So any technology that can make the employees behave, I would.
So addressing the behavioral part, interesting. That actually came up in the previous session also, that one of the respondents said that the biggest challenge he sees in the new world is the behavioral part, where we could have technologies, but then people would not maintain social distancing. They may not put on the masks, etc., and they would just kill that whole safety agenda. So you're saying something along those lines?
No. So that was just basically a lighter comment. But the technology that can provide seamless, touchless experience, right, is the preference.
That's touchless technologies, got it. Vidya, if I were to just sort of flip that around and ask you, why is the adoption, what would it take for the adoption to increase in terms of touchless technologies, for example, in the offices? Because Sanjay did mention earlier, and he's right, that in spite of a lot of solutions being out there, they're not being adopted to the large extent.
See, I think, and that's why I keep saying, when I say put the employee in the center of it, it also means that they take ownership of it. I think somewhere, if you don't take the larger workforce and the operating teams really, who drive a lot of this, with you, and make it critical, it won't work, because you can keep putting in the fanciest technology, but if the adoption doesn't work, then what's the point? And I'll give you an example of, I think most of us have some kind of a technology solution for dealing with emergency communications, right? Any continuity risk, etc. I think it's also about being smart, leveraging it at the right time. We had a solution we had implemented, I think, sometime last year for any emergency communications. It could do an escalated call. First it gives you an SMS, and if you want to trace a person, let's say there's a weather or a climate related or some incident which needs you to track people, it'll call you, then it'll call your manager. So there's the whole calling tree which is automated, etc. I don't think people paid as much attention to it as they are now, because they realize it's such a cool way of reaching out to people. And now we're not just using it for emergency communications, but certain other kinds of communications as well. So I think it's also about timing some of this right. And actually, in some cases, you have some very nice solutions in your arsenal. Maybe it's just time to redo it, repackage it, rebrand it, and bring it back. So and that's why I said bring it to the front room. I don't think a lot of users know what it means because, I mean, let's face it, this is a very it's a technical space for a lot of the business teams. They don't necessarily have to understand. So I think it's our job as well to educate them on some of these pieces. If I mean, you did ask Sanjay what his wish list would be. I would say I hope there is more focus on some of these technologies. And I don't really want the pandemic to become our overarching theme, saying everything touchless, this, that. I'm an optimist. I feel, if not 9, 12 months, we will sort of be out of this in some reasonable shape and form. But there are other areas, there are other madness in the world that will continue. You will continue to see active shooter. You will continue to see, weather-related changes, and so and there will be physical security incidents. Can there be more focus on those in terms of convergence of technologies? I think it's a big area, and let's face it. I mean, while the pandemic's got a lot of attention, and it should, but there is an equally big, large threat. If you look at some of our geographies we operate in, on active shooter, on all those kinds of risks, which are just as large. It was active shooter before pre-pandemic. That was the focus. So, I mean, my pet peeve is that we only remember the last big incident, but one has to keep the steer on all the incidents and risks that we carry.
True. Never a dull moment for sure. But look, my biggest takeaway from what both of you have said in different ways and in different parts of the session today is that experience, or the whole putting the employee in the center of all your decision making, is going to drive your agenda successfully. Otherwise, it's just checking on the box, but in spirit, you're really not moving the needle. I'm with you on that. Just moving along, just conscious of time. We have 4 minutes left. In the new world, as the real estate function plays a more important role in driving employee safety, well-being, sustainability target, etc., and everything we discussed, what sort of metrics do you think will become more commonly used to measure success of these programs and the function, I should say? Sanjay, would you like to go first?
So, frankly, I would not focus on the metrics that much, but I would focus on conditioning, workplace as a function to some of these large discussions that are still open, right? All I can say is that expectations will need to change. Personal challenges will be equally important as professional challenges. For example, let's think about a woman employee who's supposed to manage home as well as her office, right? So, we need to draw boundaries between personal and professional space. Right now, it's all hazy. I mean, people think I'm online and available all the time. For example, the key question is how would these virtual relationships work, right? So to me, I mean, both from a business partner perspective and an employee perspective, some of these things emerge as more important to me. And later on, if they get converted into some sort of a metrics or some sort of a governance, that's a different discussion. Routine things like operations, etc. I mean, very clearly, technology will help.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Focus on the agenda and the metrics will follow, I guess. Vidya, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we spoke of business partner in some context, and for me at least, it's that's never been a question. I think from the time I have done this for now almost 10 years, and this function being a business partner at the same, almost with the same level of involvement as any other function is is there's no questions about it. What that does when you say I'm becoming a business partner and I'm getting a seat on the table is also that you sort of we have access to certain ecosystems which we should bring into the mainstream conversations with businesses so that they can have interesting or more involved discussions with clients, or go and put yourself out in front of clients. For example, now with work from home, whether we do it for 1 year or 6 months or 5 months, the biggest question for some of the clients is physical security at home. How do you handle physical security? And that's where functions like us, can partner with the technology teams and go and say, hey, I have a solution that's interesting in the space of physical security. It may not complete all your challenges, but it'll complete part of your questions. That's where you end up becoming almost in a consultative role with the business. And I think that's the responsibility that a lot of us will carry. And metrics do follow. I think the second piece obviously is there's a lot of things we already track. I keep saying this, democratizing it and making it available for people who are interested. Whatever maybe the key metrics that you think you need, whether it's mean time between failure, whether it is the quality of air in the building, or it's how many breakdowns you had. Put those. I mean, we all have technology that where you can put that and create very easy to use dashboards. Enable the business teams to start using it. I don't think they need to be spoon fed. I think we are in a world of a lot of consumerization of the way data gets consumed, and I think we'll have to start thinking of those, and we don't need to flood them with things. If we put ourselves in the shoes of operations and employees and say what are the 4 things that matter to them the most, and then make that the focus. I think that's where I think a lot of us have a responsibility to not be passive partners, but actually lead the charge. And I mean, and obviously in some cases you may not be able to convince, but I think in 8 out of 10 you will be able to drive the agenda.
Right. I think in the context of the conscious workplace discussion we had a few minutes ago, to Sanjay's point as well, in the new world, certainly we will have to look at aspects that we probably took for granted or never had to look at in the past. Could be, like you said, physical or data security when the employees are at home. Could be the whole experience piece that extends beyond the workplace. Could be mental well-being, because like Sanjay said, there's no line drawn between day and night or work and home anymore. So as we focus on these agendas, the entire ecosystem, not just service providers, but also clients will have to get involved. And that will obviously, in a way, drive the whole discussion around metrics as well, which I totally, I'm aligned with you on that. With that, I will unfortunately have to call this session to a close. It was a very interesting discussion, and I wish we had more time. Thank you so much, Vidya. Thank you so much, Sanjay. It's been a delight, and please stay safe. Asim, with that, I turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thanks.